Today, we're diving into something really personal, a pretty raw piece of writing from an engineer named Gobal Krishnan V. And you should know, this isn't some formal article you'd find in a journal. It's more like a heartfelt cry about his journey through education and the world he ran into afterward. He starts with this direct plea, right out of the gate. He wants us to understand his pain. And that tells you everything, doesn't it? This story isn't about data or statistics, it's all about the human experience. The real feelings at the center of a really difficult journey. So let's get into it. Where does this all begin? Well, it starts with what he calls the pressure to learn. He paints this picture of a life path that wasn't really chosen by him, but was kind of dictated for him by society. I mean, this was the message he got growing up. It wasn't just gentle encouragement, you know. It was this stark warning. Get educated or your life will be spoiled. He says it was seen as the only way to keep from being cheated by the world. And going down this path, it came at a huge cost. He talks about the incredible struggle his parents went through. He even mentions having to work himself during his school days just to help cover the fees. The sacrifice was just enormous for everyone. So that really begs the question, right? With all that struggle, what was really pushing him forward? Was it some deep personal passion for engineering? Turns out no. His answer is incredibly blunt. He chalks the whole thing up to one thing: environmental pressure. Just this feeling of being forced by his surroundings, by what his community and society expected of him. And this, right here, brings us to the absolute core crisis of his story. This is where we see that huge gap between what was promised and what he actually got. 20 years. Just let that sink in for a minute. That's 2 decades of his life. 2 decades invested in school and college, just following the path that was laid out for him. And after all that time, all that sacrifice from him and his family, what did he get? He says it was basically just a piece of paper, a certificate, and not much else. This just lays the disconnect bare. On one hand, you've got this promise from society. You study hard, you do the work, and you get a secure future, a good life. But then, there's the cold, hard reality he faced. Employers just looking at him and asking, so why should we give you a job? Okay, so this is where his personal story, his disappointment, starts to widen into this massive critique of what he just calls the system. He basically argues that in this system, his talent and his education, they just weren't enough. And he's crystal clear about who he thinks the bad guy is here. For him, the system isn't some vague idea. It's a specific structure, one that's controlled by wealthy people who, in his words, actively spoil the lives of talented people who just don't have money. He really sees the world in these black and white terms. On one side, you've got educated, skilled people like him, people with talent but no cash, and on the other side, you've got the rich, who he believes use their money to control everything and just ruin the chances for everybody else. And in his view, this isn't just about finding a job. He sees this exact same problem playing out everywhere. In education, in marriage. He even mentions sports. As he puts it, this can happen in literally any field. This all leads us to the final and frankly the most desperate part of his lament. He's left asking this fundamental question. If the whole system is broken, where on earth are you supposed to find truth? And that really is the question, isn't it? If everything is rigged in favor of money, what institutions are even left that are supposed to provide fairness and truth? So he runs down the list, and it's almost like a checklist of fading hope. Can he find justice with the police? A lawyer? What about a judge? He even goes all the way to the top, the Supreme Court. And you can feel how each question gets heavier and more hopeless. And this brings him to his devastating conclusion. In his eyes, none of these institutions can deliver real justice. And why? Because he believes they're all part of that same system, all ultimately working for money, which he sees as the root of all this corruption. And that's where he leaves us, with this final haunting question that just hangs in the air. After this whole journey, the pressure, the sacrifice, the disappointment, the anger at the system, he's just left asking, who in this world is there to give justice to the innocent? It's a really powerful thought to end on.